All right, let's get right into it. We're going to talk about Kenya's economic transformation, but here's the twist. We're not starting at the top with big policy decisions. Nope, we're starting from the ground up. We're going to follow the journey of a single farmer's harvest all the way to Wall Street. It's a really amazing story about connection, tech, and just plain ambition.
And it all really begins with someone just like Bonnie Tobit. This quote from her, it just perfectly captures both the problem and the promise. She says AMAC gave her tools and markets she'd never had before. Think about that. Before you can even dream of global trade, you have to solve a really basic problem. Your food's spoiling before you can even sell it. This is where real economic growth actually begins.
So that leads us to the big question for this whole explainer. How exactly do you build a system that can take what a farmer like Bonnie grows and get it onto a supermarket shelf, say, halfway across the world? It's this giant puzzle, right? A puzzle of logistics, finance, and technology. So let's start putting the pieces together. Okay, our first section, we're focusing on the absolute foundation of all this, the harvest itself, and the tough challenges that farmers are up against every single day. I mean, just think about it for a second. You could be the best farmer in the world, growing amazing produce. But if you can't store it properly or get a loan for next season's seeds or figure out how to ship everything and actually get paid, well, you're stuck. These aren't just little problems. They are massive roadblocks, and solving them is the absolute first step to unlocking the incredible potential of agriculture in Africa. So how do you fix these problems for thousands of farmers all at once? Well, you need an engine, a modern, tech-powered system that's built specifically to crush these grassroots challenges. And here is that very engine. It's a company called Africa Mega AgriCorp PLC, or AMAC. Now, they're a publicly listed company, which tells you this is a serious, scaled-up operation. And their entire mission, their whole reason for being, is to build the infrastructure that helps farmers succeed. They're not just buying and selling, they're building the entire pipeline.
Now, what I love about this slide is how each one of these solutions is a direct answer to the hurdles we just talked about. No cold storage? Bam! They're building smart cold chains. Can't reach global markets? Okay, here's a digital platform with tracking. Don't have the right tools or enough money? They'll help with that too. You see? It's a completely integrated end-to-end solution.
And make no mistake, this is not a small operation. To pull this off, the leadership has to be thinking big. I mean, this is pulled straight from their job description for a new CEO. They have to deal with growth plans, forge partnerships with major banks, and even talk policy with governments. This is way beyond just running a company. It's about building an entire economic ecosystem from the ground up.
Okay, let's move on to the next critical piece of this puzzle. You've got an engine like AMAC, but every engine needs fuel, right? And in this case, the fuel is a pretty sophisticated financial system, one that can power trade from a local village all the way to the global market. And this table just lays it all out so clearly. Look at the diversity of that financial fuel. You've got big commercial banks like KCB offering special loans just for tea farmers. Then you've got Cooperative Bank doing loans for dairy co-ops. And then you have institutions like Judy Kilimo, which provide loans based on assets for smaller farmers. It's not one size fits all. It's a whole ecosystem of financial tools designed for very specific needs.
So, and this is really important, we're not just talking about a simple loan from a bank. We're talking about a specialized field called trade finance. It's all about managing the very specific risks and money needs that come with moving goods across borders. It is the complex financial machinery that makes it possible for a Kenyan avocado to end up in a grocery store in Europe.
Now, to get this right, you need some serious expertise. And that's exactly where institutions like the Trade and Development Bank, or TDB, come into play. Their entire mission is to build up the financial know-how that's needed for this kind of complex, large-scale international trade. And I mean, just look at the kind of training they're doing. This isn't basic stuff. We're talking about structuring finance deals to lower risk, credit analysis, and even understanding anti-money laundering rules. Building up these skills is absolutely essential so that the financial system can safely back companies like AMAC, and in turn, farmers like Bonnie.
So let's recap. We've got farmers with better tools, we have an AgriTech engine connecting them to markets, and we've got a financial system to fuel it all. So what's the next logical step? You go big. You take this entire story and you pitch it on the biggest stage in the world, Wall Street.
This is it, the Bullish Africa Summit in New York. It's held at the same time as the UN General Assembly, which is no accident. Its purpose is crystal clear: to build a bridge, a direct connection between the opportunities being built in Kenya and the biggest pools of money on the planet. And just to give you a sense of who's in the room at a meeting like this, the investment firms represented there have more than $50 trillion US dollars in assets they manage. That's trillion with a T. This is not some small conference. This is a very serious, high-stakes pitch for major investment. And just look who is sitting at the table. On one side, you've got the president of Kenya himself, plus the CEOs of the country's biggest and most important companies, like KCB Bank and Safaricom. And on the other side, the absolute giants of Wall Street, JP Morgan, Bank of America, Citigroup. And let's be really clear. The money they're asking for isn't just about numbers on a page. It's the capital that could launch the next dozen AMACs, build the next 100 cold storage hubs, and ultimately change the lives of thousands more farmers, just like Bonnie.
As Eric Asuma, who helped organize the whole event, put it, the goal here is to show off Kenya's potential, to strengthen that bridge, and ultimately turn all that potential into real, tangible investments.
So Kenya is making its case on the world's biggest financial stage. But this brings up a really fascinating question. How is this incredibly complex story of economic change actually being told? Because when you're asking for that kind of money, the story you tell, the narrative, becomes unbelievably important.
Well, it turns out a recent academic study looked into exactly this. They analyzed how Kenyan business journalism covers the economy, and they found that there are really two very different stories being told at the same time.
On one hand, you've got the traditional newspapers, like Business Daily. They tend to focus on the big picture stuff, macroeconomics, government policy, data from official sources like the central bank. Then on the other hand, you have digital media sites like Tuko. They're much more focused on individual stories of entrepreneurship, on startups, and they tell those stories in a much more conversational, easy-to-read way.
And here's the key takeaway. Neither of these stories is more right or wrong than the other. In fact, you absolutely need both of them. The institutional story provides the solid data-driven proof that investors need. But the entrepreneurial story provides the energy, the excitement, and it connects with a much wider audience. Together, they paint a complete picture.
And that brings us to our final question. As Kenya stands on that global stage, making its case to that $50 trillion audience, which story is going to resonate the most? Will it be the formal institutional story of stability and macro policy, or will it be the dynamic, ground-level story of innovation and entrepreneurship? The story that those investors choose to believe in, well, that could decide where all that capital flows next and write the next chapter of Kenya's entire economic journey.